let's shift gears into all things Glen Shelton. All right. So I wanted to start off at the beginning, right? A lot of people know Glen as founder of Lead Heroes, founder of Hire Heroes, right? Telemarketing expert, lead generation expert, delegation expert, staffing expert, all of these things. But take us back to the beginning. What made you first get your license? And what were those early years like as an agent?
Yeah. So it started at the time. So I was in college. Well, we'll start there. I think that's probably the best starting point. So I have my associate's degree in general studies. I was looking at getting my bachelor in most likely philosophy is what it was going to be, because I was wanting to go pre-law. So I didn't really care about my bachelor's degree. It was mostly just like get it done so I can go to law school. And then by the time I got to year 3 of college and I looked ahead at the road of this is going to be another 5 years of school before I am then in a position to start really making money. On top of the fact I'm not a great student. Like that's just not my I love learning and I love studying things. Like that's not the it's the structure of it, of
The
class.
classroom. Yeah.
Yeah, like I like reading, I like learning. That's never been the problem. It's the structure of the classroom, whether it's online or in class, that and then being forced. And that's the other thing, is like there's portions of it where it's like maybe I'm not interested in this part of it, but then this other part I'm interested. So got to a point where, between looking ahead of where I was going and also the fact that I was married and I had a kid already at this point, I really felt the need to start making money right away.
Wait. So back up. You're just graduating college at this point and you're moving into the workforce? I didn't realize you got married that early. Is that right? Do I have that right?
Yeah. So got married very young. I was 20 years old when I got married. So I was married before this. I was talking about year 3 of college. So I have my associate's degree. So I have my associate's degree in general studies. So I have a 2-year degree. I was entering year 3. I had transferred to Oregon State. So go Beavers. And it was my first semester at Oregon State when I realized I wasn't going to basically it seemed too far away. I really did want to become a lawyer. I thought it would be a great career choice. I thought I could make a lot of money. It was something that was really interesting to me, but it just seemed out of reach. It seemed too far away. I knew I needed to start making money essentially now.
Mhm.
I was already in debt for my stupid 2-year degree. Now I'm looking at taking on 6 figures of debt or more, depending on what law school I would go to.
Right.
It just the math on it just didn't pencil. Like there was no way you could pencil it where, how do I support my family, take on more debt, and then become a lawyer? And then on top of it, I'm having conversations too with people who had just graduated law school, and they were talking about how they couldn't find a job, or they're at some, entry level position where they're not even making 6 figures.
Right.
And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm like, this is crazy. It doesn't make sense. I'm like, none of this makes any sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's something that my view of it, I guess, because I have a different view of it because I dropped out of college, right? I have a whole semester of community college under my belt. So
Hey,
there.
so much more educated than you.
You have much better education than I
I
do.
have a degree from a community college. I'm a genius.
Yes. And then here's me, lost all my credits by now, everything like that. But like, I feel like a lot of people come out of school like that, thinking, almost like, in a sense, almost being like sold a dream of like, okay, you're going to go to school, you're going to get this degree, you're going to come out, you're going to be so qualified, and you're just going to walk into some position, some career path, right? And then they get out, and it's like, oh, it's a lot different than that.
Yeah, and again, like I'm not against education or colleges, or like if it makes sense for you and your path. I do think that there's a bit of a misleading, I don't know, especially our generation, the millennial generation. I feel like we were really sold this pipe dream of, as long as you get your 4-year degree, you're going to be set for life. Like there was this, I don't, I feel like the new generation, that they're not really being sold that same dream. And maybe the previous generation, Gen X, maybe it was kind of true for them because that's how the workforce was really operating back then. So we were kind of this weird in between. That's kind of a story for another time. But
Yeah.
Anyway, so we moved to Oregon because I got into Oregon State and I really wanted to go there. I'm basically just getting started at Oregon State, and I realize I really need to make an income now. And I'm trying to figure out, is it possible that I can, make a significant income and stay in school? And then as I'm like looking around at some of these different job options, I realize it's really not going to fit. It's just not going to make sense. So, it was really sad to me at the time, but I drop out of school. I end up getting into Verizon after kind of looking around at a few different positions. The income potential working for Verizon, and this was like a retail sales position. I already had some sales experience already at this point. I had sold ding and dent refrigerators for Sears at a Sears outlet store. I had done some door-to-door sales selling ADT alarm systems. I had done a little bit of pest control. So I'd already done some sales. So, the Verizon position seemed like a good fit. It was technology, cell phones, the income potential was there. So I got into it, and it was a pretty good fit. And honestly, kudos to Verizon. They really invested in training and invested in their employees, which a lot of people don't. I remember being impressed with how extensive the training was before I even started selling. I probably trained for almost a full month and had a lot of success there. And now again, I get to this point after being there for a couple years. I'm making 6 figures. I have benefits. My family's provided for. We're happy, but it gets to this point where I'm again at this kind of crossroads of, well, what does the future look like from here? And the future was the corporate ladder, right? I'm already being, I'm kind of being earmarked, or they're talking about me being the next assistant manager, and then it's like, and then you could be the manager, and then you could be the district manager, right? The classic, it was a classic corporate ladder, and you have all these people who've already climbed it, who are, talking to you about, you could do this, and then there's some like parallel moves you could make potentially inside the company, but this was the point in time where I really wanted to do something different. And this was like 2011, 2012. It was right around the time that Wolf of Wall Street came out. And it seems so silly to say this, but there was something watching that movie where it kind of clicked for me, like, the financial space, there's so much money to be made in the financial space. And so I start looking around as I'm still working at Verizon full time. I'm looking around at some of these different opportunities. And one of the first ones I start looking at seriously is becoming a financial advisor for Waddell Reed.
Oh,
And
I never knew this.
so I was very close to becoming a financial advisor. And I interviewed with them. I kind of liked it. It wasn't too far from me where I was living at the time. But then, and they sold insurance, right? Do you know a lot about Waddell and Reed, or?
No, I don't know a lot about. So
Yeah.
their financial planning outfit, did they do like full on securities and all of those things? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I never took the job, so I can't speak specifics, but from what I remember during the interview, the focus was on really retirement and 401ks. I think there was some variable in there as well, because it was all assets under management, right? So their whole pitch was, Glenn, you're young, you become a financial advisor now. Over the next 20, 30 years, you get more and more money under management. You're going to get a percentage of all of that you accrue under assets under management. and that's kind of your ticket out. And they also sold insurance, and this is where insurance really came more into the field of play for me, because they're talking about how they're also selling insurance, and part of it would be I'd have to get my insurance license to do the job. And they're explaining how insurance can actually be a lucrative part of their business, because it's more, again, depending on the situation and what's applicable to the client. Sometimes insurance makes more sense than even the asset under management.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So at this point, are you still 20 or are you a little bit older at this point? So you got married at 20.
I'm 22
22.
at this point. I'm probably
Okay.
22. Yeah.
Okay. So 22, you're offered this job. Probably sounds pretty good at the time. What was
Yeah.
the ultimate decider that made you think this isn't it for me?
The ultimate factor was, I felt like I trusted my sales experience. I'm pretty seasoned at this point. I've got 3 or 4 years of solid sales history behind me. I felt like if I sit down with, and again, they were pretty upfront in this Waddell and Reed interview when I'm talking. I think I interviewed a couple times. So like they were basically explaining that, the typical sales cycle, it's like 5 to 10 meetings before you're getting that asset under management, right? I mean, if you have $2, $3, $4, $5 million that you're investing, you're probably not turning that over in 1 to 2 meetings, right?
Right.
So I didn't love the idea of that sales cycle. And I also felt like, being a 22-year-old, the trust factor of being that young, right? If I'm 22 years old and I'm sitting down with someone that's, 50, 60 years old, and they have millions of dollars, and I'm thinking they might look at me and be like, kid, what do you know? Like, you don't know anything, right? So I felt like the commodity transaction of selling insurance, I felt like that was going to be so much easier for me. I felt like that fit into my paradigm so much better. And so that interview and ultimately I did get offered the job, but it kind of, that's what sent me spiraling towards insurance. Is, I'm looking around for some type of opportunity with unlimited commissions, where I can essentially grow my own business inside the financial sector. I think it's financial advisor. I go to this interview, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, you know what? I think insurance would be the best fit for me, actually, just based on, my history and my sales experience.